So tonight is the Taste of Maya, May 18th, 2023. And we will be sending the recording out to many people who could not attend, and to all of you as well, just in case, you know, some people like to hear it again, because it's such a riveting experience. You never know.
Really?
So,
No pressure.
right. But more people are coming in, and we want to give everybody a chance to be part of this. So
We're definitely on Jewish time, so it'll take a while.
17.
So when we begin, I'm going to ask everybody to, or I'll put everybody on mute, just so that we don't have, it's one of our rules for when Maya classes are held online, is to say, we love you and your family and your dogs and your phone calls and your coffee machines and all that, but we really would prefer if everybody could be on mute and be mindful of others, so that everybody can get the best experience. So, so that's what we do. I am seeing the closed caption at the top of my screen. It says, who can see this?
Yes, it's there.
Okay, so that's where I'm finding it. I hope you can find it, Paul, who's asking for it. Okay, one more minute and we'll begin our Taste of Maya. Thank you for joining us. This is very exciting that so many of you could be with us. And if you'd like to tell us where you're from, and you can put it in the chat, or you can put it next to your name, that would be great. Okay, so let's get started. I thank you all for coming on time. I'm Terry Swartz-Russell. I'm the Associate Director of the Maya program at Hebrew College, which is part of our adult learning department, which also includes Open Circle, which is another form of adult learning, and our Ulpan program to learn Hebrew. So there's lots and lots to learn. I wanted to begin with a few questions, since we have so many people. We can't go around and have everybody introduce themselves and tell us why you want, what you're interested in. But I just wanted to do by a show of hands, and you can use your real hand if you want, or you can use the raise hand thing. How many people are local in from the Boston area? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. And how many people are out of state, out of Massachusetts? Okay, well, welcome to all of you. The Maya program has been attracting lots of people from all over the country, even Europe, because it's a unique kind of program. And we'll hear more about the actual curriculum. My colleague, Jacob, who's around here somewhere, there you are. Thank you. I will highlight you. Will be teaching us, but also explaining a little bit about the curriculum. So another hand raising thing. How many of you have questions about the Jewish people and Jewish history? I do. And how many people consider, if you're Jewish, consider that your Jewish education to date has been missing some things? Okay, so that gives you a sense. I'm sure that other people have other reasons for wanting to take Maya. If you're at some point as we go along, if you want to put it in the chat, we'd love to hear your reasoning behind it. I just want to begin with a quote from a two quotes from former students. And then I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of some of the questions and answers. One of my other questions was, how many people have gone online already to the Maya pages on the Hebrew College site and read up about the program? Raise your hand. Okay, so some of the things I'm going to say are going to be a little repetitive, but I want everybody to hear the information all together. So from a woman named Barbara, Maya introduced me to history, poetry, and ideas that furthered my sense of what it means to be Jewish. As a graduate, I now understand everything I read and hear in a more informed, thoughtful way. I also had fun in class, meeting many new people and making connections to the wider Jewish community. Thank you for creating this life-enhancing program. And from another guy, Maya has been a profoundly revitalizing experience. It has deepened my sense of Jewish identity, enriched me with the treasures of our Jewish past, and opened new vistas of Jewish learning and life. So, you know, hopefully if you take Maya, you will have that kind of experience. But that's just some people. Our graduation is next week from this year's cohort, finishing a 2-year program. So hopefully everybody knows that the Maya program began, well, you don't know this, but it began in the 90s. So it's about 30 years old. And it was focused mostly in the Boston area, but it's expanded. And it is a 2-year program of study with 4 semesters. Jacob will talk about what happens in each of the semesters briefly. Classes meet, each semester is about 11 sessions long. Each session is 2 hours long. We have amazing faculty from Hebrew College. Some of them teach in the rabbinical school. Some of them are PhDs and have taught at many different illustrious, seriously illustrious universities, and some still do. You do not have to have previous Judaic knowledge to take Maya. You don't have to know Hebrew. There are no formal tests, papers, etc. You just have a desire to learn. And there is homework, quote unquote, and how that goes is that the professors will share readings that they think might be of interest to you for the discussion that they're going to have in class each week. And what the way they do this is, you know, not everybody has all the time in the world. They will tell you, if you have a little bit of time, read this article. If you really want to go in depth, here's 3 more articles, you know, or movies or whatever's to watch. So, and if you can't do all the reading or you can't do the reading, believe me, just attending the classes and being there in person is wonderful. And you'll get a lot out of it. I took Maya while I was working full time. I will admit I did not do all the reading every week, and I still had a wonderful experience. If you miss a class, each week we record the classes, and the recording is sent out is made available to everybody in the class. So you will be able to, you know, review and hear the class that you missed. What else? At the end of 2 years, you're going to get a certificate, and there's a whole graduation ceremony. In terms of the costs and any other additional costs, Maya tuition could change any minute. It hasn't changed for the last 3 years. It's for 4 years, I know. It was $650 for the year, so $325 a semester. Which in this day and age is still a bargain. It may go up a little bit. We have scholarships available. You would email me and we would work out a plan. The only other additional cost is every once in a while, the professors will recommend a book that goes with what they're teaching, or books that you might want to purchase because they go with that semester's topics and they're worth reading. That's, let me just check my other lists. Where do the close? So this is very important. We have not, at the end of this, today's session, I could say, oh, I want you to register, but we're not ready to do that yet because we are still in the process of you know, talking to students. We want to see how many we are actually want to apply, not apply, but participate. We'll hold classes daytime. We will hold classes in the evening. I would like everybody, if you have not yet, and many of you have, to send me an email saying what your preference is. Also, if your preference is to learn online, obviously, if you're out of state, it's online. But we do have, this year, we do have an in-person class that's been meeting all year long. And we are ready and able to set up an in-person class if we have enough people to do that. So those are all the questions that we have to sort of and the information we have to gather before we can set up the actual classes. In the past, before COVID, when everything went online, we had a lot of classes, Maya classes that would meet in different parts of the greater Boston area. That could be the North Shore, that could be Sharon, that could be Brookline, it could be all over the place. And we met in synagogues. So if you have a community, a home community that might be interested in hosting, you know, a Maya program, meaning can they provide a classroom on a given night or a given afternoon or morning, and help us record the sessions, let me know. So I think that's about it. Yeah, so those are all the basic pieces of information. I'd like to welcome a few of our colleagues from tonight. So if I introduce you, please wave your hand. We have a new director of adult learning at Hebrew College, Kim Bodemer, and she is in one of these boxes. There she is. She's just joined us recently. And coming this summer, we have, I will have a partner in crime, another associate director of Maya, Robin Kahn, and she's here somewhere. So there she is. Hi, Robin. Tonight we're going to have Dr. Jacob Meskin, who I will introduce in a minute, teach us. This is the most important part of Maya, obviously, is learning how to work as a class and learning amazing things. So Jacob is going to spend, I don't know, 25 minutes, 30 minutes teaching us. And I've made him a co-host, so he's going to share his screen. And but first, you should know a little bit about him. Jacob is the academic advisor and senior lecturer in the Maya program at Hebrew College. He teaches and has taught for both Maya Classic and the Maya Select programs, and at various synagogues and professional groups in the Boston area for many years. He's also taught at a number of prestigious universities, including Princeton, Rutgers, Yeshiva University, Northeastern Williams, and Lehigh University. Despite coming from New York, Jacob has become an avid Boston sports fan. His hobbies include chess, Go, 19th century English novels, old movies, and Indian vegetarian food. And Jacob lives in Brookline with his wife and daughter. So I'm going to hand it over to Jacob. I'm going to highlight him. I'm going to ask everybody if you could please mute yourselves. When Jacob wants you to talk, you'll be able to unmute yourself. And that would be wonderful. And let's the studying begin.
Wow, wait, now I can't see anybody.
Which would you prefer?
I'd rather see everybody.
Okay, then you will not be highlighted.
Well, I suspect they'll hear me anyway.
I
I hope you can all hear me. I have a pretty loud voice. So thank you for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. I don't know about you. Listening to other people talk on Zoom, you know, I don't know, may not be the most exciting thing in the universe. I have a lot of interesting things to show you via the screen share function. It'll make it more interesting. Let me back up a step and just talk about Maya. For better or for worse, I've been working for Maya for a very long time. As we'll be talking about tonight, Maya may date back at least to the biblical period. Okay, that's not true. Maya is not 2,000 years old. Terry and I are very well preserved if we go back that far. Maya did start in the mid-90s. The idea, and maybe this is a crazy idea, was to take a bunch of academics, put them in synagogues at night, and make normal people understand Judaism. So you at this point might think, forget it, that's impossible. And you'd be right. It's very difficult. Going into a synagogue at night to listen to a professional scholar could easily cure all possible sleeping problems. So it took some time to fine tune it. We had to find people who were passionate about their material and had the scholarly credentials. So Maya is a little bit of a hybrid. It's an academic program. Everybody who teaches from Maya either has a PhD or is getting a PhD in some area of Jewish studies. But the goal isn't to turn you guys into more Jewish studies scholars. I'm a Jewish studies scholar. One of me is more than enough, and there's plenty more. The goal is to make you able to own this material. Judaism is a very long and very complex, very profound religion. leaving out the questions about belief, which are extremely important. Simply understanding how it works, what the texts are, what the beliefs are, what the arguments are, is a lot of work. It may enhance your belief if you're a believer. It may discourage your belief. It isn't so much directly about belief, it's about understanding. We have all sorts of students. We have students who are passionately committed from the Orthodox side of the spectrum all the way through the Reconstructionist and secular atheistic side of the spectrum. Maya seems to be able to help just about everybody. So that's what it actually is. In your 4 semesters, you'll have a professor who is a scholar of the Bible. In the fall of your first year, your second semester, that's spring, will be a scholar of the Rabbinic period. Then you come back, you go off mostly to the beach during the summer. You forget everything you learned for the first year. Then you come back and you have to suddenly remember it. And someone shows up and starts talking to you about the history of medieval Judaism. And then when that is over, in the spring of your second year, an expert in modern Jewish history shows up. So you will have had 4 semesters: Bible, Rabbinics, Medieval, and Modern. The classes are usually 15 to 20 students, give or take. Traditionally, of course, this has been in person. One of the things I'm going to try to do tonight, although it's crazy, is to replicate the feel of a Maya class. If you are Jewish and you've ever tried to talk with your fellow Jews, you know that you're always wrong. So that's what a Maya class is like. I've taught this for years. I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter. That's healthy. So I'm going to see if we have an opportunity to even tonight, for you guys to raise questions. You'll use the hand raise function, or just shout out. To the degree we can do that tonight and still get over in 30 minutes, we will try. Maya classes are pretty energetic. If they're not, they usually don't work. So that's the idea. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. The only other thing I'd say is all the readings from Maya are put up on a website to which you have access via a password. All of that material is free. The only extra cost other than the tuition for Maya, as Terry mentioned, that you might have is your instructor might say, I'd like to use this particular textbook. If they do, it's almost always used and in paperback and available online. So there's not going to be a large other expense. However, warning, if you're a bibliophile and you get into Maya, you will start falling in love with Jewish books. We do have social workers standing by. This can drive real problems between you and your spouse. The house fills up with books. You never see each other. You go out with your books instead of your spouse. We have counselors. But okay, that is a rough sketch of what we do in Maya. My problem tonight is, how am I going to give you a sample class? A class of Maya is usually 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes. We usually start about 1 hour and 10 minutes. We have a break. In the old days, when people met in person in synagogues, we'd have coffee, food for 10 minutes. People get to know each other. Then we have like another hour. I've got maybe 30 minutes tonight. So we're going to do some cheating. I'm going to try to give you a sample of a class that you might experience in the rabbinic part of Maya. That would be your second semester. You would have had 10 weeks of the history and analysis of biblical texts. So imagine yourself to be profoundly knowledgeable about the Hebrew Bible. Now, the particular class I want to give you is probably the third of the 10, and it's to introduce you to a book. So tonight we're going to be learning about one book. It is the first book the rabbis wrote, a real page turner. Okay, not. It's called the Mishnah. If you're already an expert in the Mishnah, you will find tonight repetitive. My own experience is every time I say Mishnah to my students, their eyes droop and they reach for an imaginary TV remote and they try to change the channel, but it's a class. The Mishnah has a terrible reputation for being a very uninteresting book. I hope in the 25 to 30 minutes tonight, I will try to tell you why the rabbis, whoever they were, wrote this thing called the Mishnah and what it is, and why actually it's going to turn out to be far more exciting than you thought. That's the pitch. Just let's start simple. The word Mishnah, it's hard to translate it. It means the teaching, what is taught, but it could also mean what is repeated. So I accidentally just happened to have a picture of the actual Mishnah itself. Let's see if I can get this to work here. I'm trying to impress Terry with how technologically sophisticated I am. It probably won't work, and it's not working. Okay. All right, Terry, I'm not working here. Let's see. Better. Okay, let's go back and now try it. There we go. Optimizing. There we go. This is the physical Mishnah. I hope you can all see this. This one is from 1933. This is an English edition. This book is about 600, 700 pages long. You can see I am holding a copy in my hands. I would not rush to go out and get this one from 1933, but if you can see, it's got lots of little tight paragraphs. Now, why am I wasting your time with this visual? Well, I want to contrast that visual. The Mishnah is the first book the rabbis wrote. You probably realize that they've written a lot of other books as well. Let me give you just a quick picture of the main commentary they wrote on the Mishnah. I think you've heard of it. Let's see if I can make this one work. It's not working for some reason. Okay. I don't know why. Let's go back. There we go. All right. This is the 19-volume, 500 pages of volume, Babylonian Talmud. Act now, be the first one on your block to own all the volumes. This is the commentary on the previous book I just showed you, the Mishnah. The Talmud, as I said, is probably 19 times 300 to 500 a volume. That's about 8,000 pages. So it's probably 10 to 15 to 1. So, Judaism is a religion for people who like to read. Whatever the Mishnah is or isn't, it's spawned an enormous commentary. And I didn't show you the other Talmud, the one they wrote in the land of Israel, not in Babylon, nor the gazillion other books Jews wrote all about the Mishnah. So whatever you think about the Mishnah, it must have done something right. It spawned enormous commentary. Okay, now, before we get into some history, we're going to need to understand this book. I'm going to do something insane. I want to read with you the first paragraph of this book with no context whatsoever. Yes, it's madness, but that's what we do. We know that at night it's good to be a little out there. So I'm going to see if I can find just the very first beginning bit. Okay, I'm going to come back. Here we go. Here we go. I'm going to make this larger. This is a brief sample of the Mishnah. We're just going to read it. From when, that is, from what time does one recite the Shema in the evening? From the time when the priests enter to partake of their Terumah, until the end of the first watch. That is the statement of Rabbi Eliezer. The rabbis say until midnight. Rabban Gamliel says until dawn. The Mishnah relates that Rabban Gamliel practiced in accordance with his ruling. There was an incident where Rabban Gamliel's sons returned very late from a wedding hall. They said to him, as they had been preoccupied with celebrating the groom and bride, we did not recite the Shema. He said to them, if the dawn has not yet arrived, you are obligated to recite the Shema. So I hope that was crystal clear. The test will be next week. Just remember, question, from what time can you say the Shema in the evening? I'm assuming you know what a Shema is. You may not. That's going to happen later too. The Shema, of course, is the prayer you say in the evening that declares the unity of God, the 6-word prayer. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. What time can you say in the evening? It's a funny place to begin a book. If we were editing, we might say maybe you want to begin with some plot elements, but okay, that's not where the rabbis began. And the answer was when the priests come in to eat their Terumah. Doesn't that just get you? No, you're not the only one. For a long time, people have picked up this book and said, when the priests come in to eat their what? What priests? What are we talking about? Welcome to Judaism. So that was just a taste. One of the things I want to do in the next 10 minutes is give you some background. It turns out that this little beginning is a little more interesting than it sounds if you know what's going on. So forgive me, this is not how you do this in a Maya class. In a real Maya class, you would have had 3 weeks leading up to this class where you would have learned the history we're about to do in 5 minutes. So this is cheating, but let's do a little cheating. Okay, so we're going to show you a selective timeline. There we go. All right, I'm going to make this bigger too. By the way, if you can't see this, please let me know. So I'm assuming you know that Judaism has had 2 temples and had both destroyed. The second temple that was rebuilt was built in 516 BCE. There's a lot of things to say about this, but I'm going to rush a bit. I want to get to Alexander the Great. In 331, Alexander the Great creates an enormous empire, a piece of which includes Jerusalem. He then dies, and his empire is split up. You don't have to know the details, just the basic idea. The basic split is between two ruling dynasties called the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. The Seleucids get Jerusalem in 200 BCE. In 169, something happens. The province of Judea rebels against the high priest and the Seleucid Empire. And in 164, our homeboys, the Maccabees, capture Jerusalem. They repurify the temple, they rededicate it, and we get Hanukkah, the menorah, latkes, etc., etc., etc. So I just want to stop for a second. Is that history you all basically knew, give or take? It's okay if you didn't know Alexander the Great, he was a hell of a guy. That's not so important right now. The basic idea is in 140, give or take BCE, the Jews are sort of running their own show. Quick check-in. They beat off the Seleucid Empire. Did they destroy the Seleucid Empire? Not even close. This is something no one ever talks about on Hanukkah. If like me, you have very minimal Jewish education and you come to this later in life, you discover, what does it mean to say the miracle of Hanukkah is that the Maccabees and the Hasmoneans beat off the Seleucid Empire? What does it actually mean? It means they were a real pain in the neck. And the Seleucids said, okay, guys, you want to run Judea, you pay us enough money, we'll stay out of your hair. Now, you may not think that's great. It's still great. You're running your own affairs. There's some protection money. So the Jews certainly are running their own show with a lot of external support from the Seleucids and some money. This situation doesn't last forever. So I'm going to go back. All right, let's see if I can make this go back. So I'm going to rush again. In 63 BCE, after the Seleucids have been gobbled up by the Romans assign a general called Pompey, and he makes Judea a province of the Roman Empire. What the Romans do is they appoint a local Jewish king. It's a long story. We'll just say for the moment, he's a Jewish king named Herod. You've probably heard of him. And he builds a lot of things and is a very intense, impressive ruler. That doesn't last forever. He dies. And by 6 of the Common Era, the Romans don't do this anymore. They install Roman social, I guess you'd say, sort of Roman workers, Roman administrators who come in and run the show. That lasts until 66, when a Roman prefect or procurator robs the temple treasury, Jews revolt, and in 70, as you probably know, the Roman army conquers Jerusalem, burns the city, and destroys the temple. In 73, there's the resistance at Masada. In 90, there is apparently a story that a city called Yavna, presumed to be in the Galilee in Israel, is founded and has a bunch of people who call themselves rabbis in it. And then our job in 200, the publication of the Mishnah. Thank you for putting up with that. That was not history. That was a timeline. If you do want to raise a question, you please use the hand function. I just want to ask you a similar question. When the Romans take over from the Seleucids and the Jews are still running the temple, who's really running Jerusalem? There's a temple, it's standing, sacrifices are going on, there's lots of Jews. Is it the Jews running their own show entirely? No, it's not. It's just like it was before. The Seleucids had been beaten off enough so that they would take protection money. The Romans are a little different, but for a long time, the Romans say, you guys want to do this temple thing? We don't care. Do the temple thing. Just, make obeisances to us in a way we can work out, and we'll collect the taxes, and we are still running the show. This will turn out to be incredibly important in a few minutes. All right. Any questions or comments on this extremely bad version of history? Feel free if you have a question. I won't know the answer, but I'll pretend. It's a great academic skill. You learn this in graduate school. All right, no questions. So there's one more piece of information we need before we can jump back into this book. In addition to the politics, there's also, you might say, the world of religion. What's going on between roughly 100 BCE and 70 CE, roughly? What are the Jews doing? What kind of Jews are they? What do they believe? Are they paying their CJP donation dues? Do they belong to your synagogue? Presumably not. Well, what are they? So, by the way, it's okay if you don't know. I'm not sure I know. I can guarantee you I did not know before I started studying this stuff. I mean, I guess we assume, well, there've always been Jews. And they're always sort of, well, it's not actually that simple. So do you know about, this is the Second Temple period, about the Second Temple Jewish sects? For example, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes. And if you want to get interesting, the Samaritans and the Therapeutai. I don't know if I'm looking at your faces. Some of you are nodding. A lot of you are looking at me like I'm making it up as I go along or reading from a teleprompter. I am reading from a teleprompter. No, I'm not. So I have some charts. The reason I'm emphasizing this is going to become very important, and you'll see why in a moment. Before the temple is destroyed, as you might expect if you've ever met any Jewish people, there is vast Jewish disagreement. And Jews practice Judaism in a variety of ways, and they don't get along so well. That shouldn't be a shocker either. The Romans are sort of the main power, and the temple is in the hands of the Sadducees. So again, I apologize. With your permission, we're going to do all of the sectarian Judaism, in 3 minutes. And then we're finally going to get back to the Mishnah. So again, my apologies. Let's see if I can put this up on the screen quickly. All right, here we go. This is a bad overview of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. For the Sadducees on the right, that comes from the word Sadok, who is presumed to be the first high priest, the temple is all important. The sacrificial rituals that are in the Bible are required. People travel all over the land of Israel to offer those sacrifices in the temple to the priests and conducted by the priests, and the Sadducees are the sect of the priest. The Sadducees claim that the Torah alone is the basis of Jewish life, and the Sadducees have great connections with wealthier people, including upper-class Romans. The Pharisees, on the other hand, on the other side of your screen, are not so convinced that the temple is all, and seem to think that law is extremely important, and they include in law oral traditions that are passed down from previous teachers. Where the Sadducees say the text of the Bible is enough, the Pharisees say, well, we have traditions about how we read that text. The Pharisees also tend to appeal to the poor and the middle class much more than do the Sadducees. By the way, quick check-in, there are 2 pictures on this slide. I have no idea who these people are. They look like they were taken from bad 1920s silent movies. But they came with the slide for free. These are the 2 main sects. It's very important if you think about it for a second. The Sadducees control the temple. They have a fight with the Pharisees. They can get along, but it's difficult. Start thinking, what's going to happen when the temple is destroyed? It is going to be destroyed. Just an interesting thing to put in perspective. I want to talk about another group. I know this is fast, called the Essenes. You've probably heard of the Essenes. Most scholars think, although it's not been proven, that the Essenes are the group that lived in Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. So again, one more quick chart, and then we will stop this incredibly fast tour. This is very quick. The Essenes flourished from roughly 140 BCE to 68 CE. The main community was at Qumran, which today is on the West Bank, near the northwest corner of the Dead Sea. Monastic is probably a generalization that's too much, but they certainly were an ascetic group. And they did, if the theory does seem to be correct, that they wrote and hid the Dead Sea Scrolls before they were annihilated by the Romans. The Essenes, the Qumran community in general, have been the subject of enormous speculation. In your Maya Rabbinic class, you will learn an enormous amount. It's very interesting. There is speculation that the Essenes had ascetic male Jews, and there's some argument that there could have been ascetic female Jews as well, who forswore sexual activity, lived their lives with very careful observance of holiness rules about food and the Sabbath and Jewish law, and basically meditated on the Bible and created a lot of Jewish law. It's funny to hear that there were ascetic Jews, but it sounds like there probably were. Just a quick check-in, no one's ever heard of these groups, although I saw 2 people nod. In Egypt, we have evidence, according to Josephus, that there was an all-female sect called the Therapeutai. The Therapeutai were people who, again, had decided to withdraw from day-to-day life in order to meditate, and we might say philosophize, on the Hebrew Bible. One of their forms of worship that Josephus talks about is a meditational kind of chanting. It's fascinating to think that there could have been an all-female organization there. There might have been a matching male brotherhood that lived in a different place. In other words, there's enormous diversity of Jewish life in this period. We haven't even mentioned the Samaritans. And then, of course, there's also a sect of people who originally were Jews. You might have heard of them. They're now called Christians. At the time, they were Jews who followed a very charismatic and powerful leader. There's a long story there. That is an entirely different class for a different time. I just want to point out that not only was Jesus and not only were his followers Jewish, his main spokesperson, Paul, was a Pharisee. Paul says in the letters that he is a Pharisee. Fascinatingly enough, he never says he stopped being a Pharisee, even when he starts working for the Jesus movement. That should make you realize that our categories are maybe a little not subtle. I apologize, but that was the basic stuff we had to do. Again, questions or comments before we really get down to work? Because now we have to ask a question. What happened? The temple was destroyed by the Romans. Jews were exiled. The Roman Empire wasn't going anywhere. The Sadducees went out of business. There was no temple. The Essenes were all slaughtered by the Romans. Even the people who fought the Romans at Masada, called the Zealots, were destroyed as well. The Therapeutae seem to have disappeared. There's not a lot of mention of the Pharisees either. So now I do have a question. You're all sitting here. I'm sitting here. Some of you belong to synagogues. Something must have happened. Otherwise, that would have been all she wrote, and that would have been the end. How come, or even how, does it come about that we're still here? What happened? So if you need a second career, this is a hot field. In the old days, everybody thought they knew. It's obvious. The rabbis showed up, and the rabbis had been there the whole time. And when the temple was destroyed, the rabbis were ready to take over. There's just one problem. There's no evidence of any rabbis before the temple is destroyed. So what happened afterwards? It's an interesting question. What about the Pharisees? The Pharisees believed in an oral tradition. Maybe the rabbis, the people who wrote the Mishnah and the Talmud and all that, maybe they're latter-day Pharisees. Except they never say that. We have a mystery. So I want the answer on my desk tomorrow morning at 9, and I'll see you. Okay, so now we have to dig in a bit, and I'm watching the time. I'm hoping that Terry will stop me. I want to look at the mystery a little bit and see what the text can tell us. By the way, this is not so simple to finish, but maybe we can add some things. So I'm just watching the time, and I wanted to read you a long story, but, well, I'm just trying to think. It will take time to read. Well, I'm going to do it, and if we go over, I will apologize. So let's go. We're going to read the first of the stories that's supposed to explain this. Okay. Now, this story you may know. It is a famous passage in the Talmud. So I apologize. It is a page and a half, but I think you'll find it interesting. Abba Sikar was the leader of the Zealots of Jerusalem and the son of the sister of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai sent a message to him. I should tell you right now, before we go farther, this is all happening during the siege of Jerusalem in 66 to 70 CE, when the Romans are sieging the city and will soon burn down the temple. He sent a message to this man, the leader of the Zealots, "Come to me in secret." He came, and Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Until when will you do this and kill everyone through starvation?" Abba Sikar said to him, "What can I do? For if I say something to them, they will kill me." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Show me a method so that I will be able to leave the city. And it is possible that through this, there will be some small salvation." Quick check-in. Anyone know what's going on? This is the Talmud. Nothing is ever explained. I guess it kept the rabbis in business. This is the siege of Jerusalem. This guy, Abba Sikara, is the leader of the Zealots. The Zealots were so full of zealotry that they had burned the food supply. Why? Because they were trying to make the Jews fight the Romans. They were angrier at their fellow Jews than they were at the Romans who were besieging the city. The Zealots are the same people who would fight the Romans, or not fight the Romans, at Masada. Yochanan ben Zakkai is some rabbi. And he seems to be saying, you guys are killing everybody. What am I supposed to do? Maybe get me a way to get out of this city and I can make this better. A typical episode of people getting too fanatical, you might say. Abba Sikar said to him, this is what you should do. Pretend to be sick and have everyone come and ask about your welfare, so word will spread about your ailing condition. Afterwards, bring something putrid and place it near you, so people will say you've died. Then have your students enter to bring you to burial, and let no one else come in, so that the zealots will not notice that you are still light, as the zealots know that a living person is lighter than a dead person. Rabbanan Yochanan ben Zakkai did this. They did this and carried him outside the gates of the city. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai reached there, in other words, the Roman camp, he said, greetings to you, king. Greetings to you, the king. Vespasian, the Roman general, says to him, you are liable for the death penalty. I'm not a king, and you called me a king. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, as for what you said about yourself, I am not a king. In truth, you are a king. If not now, then in the future. As they were talking, a messenger arrived from Rome and said to him, rise, the emperor has died, and the noblemen of Rome plan to appoint you as their leader and makes you the next emperor. Vespasian then said to Rabbanan Yochanan ben Zakkai, I will be going to Rome to accept my new position, and I will send someone else in my place to continue besieging the city and waging war against it. But before I leave, ask something of me that I can give you. Rabbanan Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, give me the city of Yavna and its sages, and do not destroy it, and spare the dynasty of Rabban Gamliel, and do not kill them as if they were rebels. And lastly, give me doctors to heal Rabbi Tzadok. So it's important that you know that the first time anyone reads a Talmudic text, they go, what? So please feel free. If this makes no sense, you're actually reading the text. That's the marker of Jewish learning. To want to bang your head against the wall means you're doing it right. Okay, so what is going on here? We have a rabbi surrounded by zealous Jews who want to kill them some Romans, but the Romans are just too powerful. This rabbi gets himself snuck out. He goes up to the general and says, you're the king. And the general says, I'm not the king, I'm a general. Suddenly, a messenger from Rome shows up and says, hey, buddy, the old emperor just died. Now you're the king. Pretty good press for the rabbi, huh? So the guy turns to the rabbi and says, hey, rabbi, you must, something you're drinking is good stuff. I don't know how you knew that. I'm about to go and become emperor. They're going to send somebody else to kill all of you damn Jews. You want something that I can give you before I go? This is the point. What does he say? What does the rabbi ask for? A city probably in the north, probably in the Galilee, called Yavne, and its sages. This story presumably took place in 66 to 70, except we know the text I just read you is from 500 CE. It's a lot later. But let's not get too messy for the moment. I know the text is later than the events it's narrating, but what does this text mean? What is this text trying to say? Are the Jews going to, by the way, you can feel free to do the hand thing or unmute or something, but think about it. Are the Jews going to beat the Romans? No. Are the Jews going to lose and then sneak back and beat the Romans later? No. Completely outmatched. No chance. So that's not going to work. So what's this rabbi up to? It's not military. Please, Roberta, you must unmute.
He's a trickster, but he also has some kind of, either he's a trickster who guesses well, or he has some kind of clairvoyancy that is mystical, which would also suggest not that he's a Pharisee, because he's not looking at law, he's looking at some kind of mystical knowledge that that supersedes both what the Sadducees or the Pharisees would have.
So, Roberta, you're going to get an email from the Hebrew College Rabbinical School. That was a great answer. You obviously have a career as a rabbi. I had never thought about it as a mystical text, but you have a point. It's a very interesting text. This rabbi is kind of special. Clairvoyant is a very nice way to put it. He's not your run-of-the-mill guy. He's not looking for a military solution. He's too smart for that. But then the question is, okay, let's give him credit. At least let's give the story credit. The story says he's clairvoyant. But what does it mean? Give me a city and the sages in it, the Jewish sages. What's he up to? It's not military, but it must be something. What could you do with a city and a bunch of rabbis? Dance party. Okay, probably not. Nobody else. It's okay. There's no wrong answers in a Maya class. Well, I mean, I think you can begin to see. I'll tell you the answer. You won't be excited. I apologize. The theory is the rabbis at the city of Yavna, which Rabbi Zakkai got, all sat down and wrote the Mishnah. How could you miss that? What would you do? You'd sit down and write the Mishnah. You wouldn't? So this is a very interesting moment. The zealots are going to go off to Masada, fight the Romans, and then kill themselves in 73. You probably know that. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is not. He decides that military is not the way to survive. Culture and learning is the way to survive. He creates an intellectual center to study and to write and to grow a way of thinking. And that way of thinking is written down in the Mishnah. At least that's the official story. It's a great split inside of Jewish history. Is it more important to be militarily able to fight, or is it more important to be able to disseminate a culture and way of life that can survive catastrophe? Are those exclusive? Okay, go ahead, Roberta.
So I have a question. Could it be that this is the rationale for why the Mishnah is an accepted text?
Okay, that is cheating. We're about to get there. Roberta read my notes ahead, so we're not going to say anything about that, and we'll pay you not to raise that point again. We're going to be there in like 5 minutes. Thank you for that. Thomas, you must unmute.
I just had a quick question. You said there's no evidence of rabbis before the temple was destroyed. So who were these people?
Thomas, it looks like you're going to get that same check as well. Is everybody following this? I realize it's a Zoom session on a completely weird book. And if I can make you find this interesting, I get paid lots of money from the Mishnah Association. That's not true. No one cares. But this is fascinating. Thomas's question is right on the money. How is it possible? So we have a problem. Somebody wrote this book. Terry, you're going to cut me that short? I'm going to fight with Terry for a few more minutes, okay? I don't know who will win the battle. So I now want to stop. I'm glad you see the mystery. I just want to show you what a Mishnah text looks like. It'll be quick. We're just going to read through them. I want to show you what's in the book. Why write a book like this? So, hold on. Let's see. Here are some typical Mishnaic texts. We're going to look at them very quickly. Okay. I am not necessarily going to explain them. In fact, I'm going to skip. This one is about reading the Megillah. That's like, for example, the scroll of Esther on Purim. Basically, it says, if you read it out of order, and you go back, you're not fulfilling your obligation. If you read it by heart, you're still not fulfilling your obligation. If you read it in a foreign language for somebody else, they're okay, but you're not okay. What if you doze off in the middle? Well, then it depends. You're probably okay. This is a lot of very fine detail about reading something. Next one, we're making a mikvah, a pool to purify men and women from various issues. All the seas are like a mikvah, because there's a quotation in Genesis. That's the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Judah says only the Great Sea is equivalent for a mikvah. It says seas only because there are many kinds of seas. Rabbi Yossi says all seas afford cleanness while running, etc., etc., etc. And just one more, just the beginning. One who injures another is liable to pay compensation for that injury due to 5 types of indemnity: damage, pain, medical costs, livelihood, and humiliation. 3 completely different texts. One's about how you read a book or a text out loud. One's about the definition of a body of water. And one says that if you hurt somebody, like you knock out their eye, you pay based on monetary compensation. I just have to ask you a quick question. Ever hear the verse in the Hebrew Bible, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth? The Mishnah just told you that means money. Wait, the Bible says eye for an eye. And the rabbis who wrote the Mishnah said, yeah, and we're going to show you that the words themselves, when considered in Hebrew, and the words they're next to, show you it's about money. That is why the Mishnah is such an amazing book. It is rewriting the entirety of the religion. So now, Terry, can I have my 4 minutes? I'm going to take my 4 minutes. So it seems to me we're just about where we should be at this moment. We don't seem to know who wrote this book. We call them the rabbis. The evidence suggests that they are people influenced by the Pharisees, but much more radical than the Pharisees. They are willing to actually wrestle with the literal meaning of a biblical text and tell you that it looks like it means eye for an eye, but it means money. They're willing to take enormous detail into how you read a text or what's a mikvah. The Bible might mention, for example, the Sabbath. The Mishnah will go into so much detail, it'll make your head spin. This is the book these people wrote. Nothing like this exists before the Mishnah in 200 of the Common Era. So who are the rabbis? The rabbis seem to be a small group of families who are dedicated to this new project after 70, when the temple's destroyed, of making Judaism live again as an enactable, ritual, studious, cultural way of life. There's no temple, but they codify all the rules of the temple. They say when you eat your own food at your dining table and you know the laws of the temple, it is as if you are at the temple. They are substituting the world of learning and ritual for that destroyed temple. But here's the biggest point that the scholars find the most interesting. We know they are families. There are references to the learned wives of these rabbis instructing both their husbands sometimes and often their children in some of these obscure rules. They were a small group of families committed to this way of life. Did they have any power? Think about how we started the class. When the Hasmoneans and the Maccabees beat off the Seleucids, they paid the Seleucids keep everybody happy, everyone's in power because of the empire. What about the Romans? Same thing. The Romans prop up the leadership of the temple. Everybody's happy. Now the Romans got mad. They destroyed the temple. Who's running Jewish life after 70? Nobody. This is the most interesting thing about studying this. Nobody's running it. The rabbis are running it. According to the rabbis are running it. No one's paying any attention to them. Let me ask you a question. You've been very polite. I've read you several sections of the Mishnah. If I gave you this book in 200, would you say, I am signing on? I'm doing everything that the people who wrote this book say? You wouldn't even be able to understand the book. So there is apparently a power vacuum. Most Jews, after the destruction of the temple, were citizens of the Roman Empire by around 200 at least. They were Roman cosmopolitans of Jewish extraction, and most of them had not heard of the rabbis. The Mishnah was out there. It was being studied. The rabbis pushed for it to be taken seriously, and most Jews said, yeah, I'll pass. Over time, something big happened, and this will be the end. In 313, the emperor of the Roman Empire, Constantine, converted to Christianity. The entire empire became Christian. All of a sudden, Jews got much more interested in what it might mean to be Jewish. And there was a group ready with an answer. They're called the rabbis. And their book didn't have any sects. There was no fighting. All the different rabbis' names got quoted together. So the Mishnah as a project overcame the Jewish tendency to kill each other and united them on the page. They agreed to disagree, And after 313, the rabbis begin to gain traction. Any rate, I'm going to stop. I don't want to overstay my welcome. I can talk about this forever, which is very sad because I know I could have done something useful with my life, but what are you going to do? So this is just a small sample of what a real Maya class would have been like. In the real class, you would have had much more background. You would have learned a lot more about all those sects. You would have learned about the fascinating texts about the Mishnah. The Mishnah and the rabbis later reflect on this. They themselves ask, how do we dare to reinterpret the words of the Bible in this incredibly sweeping way? So it's a fascinating kind of conversation. But at any rate, I will stop. Thank you for the sample class. If you have questions, please ask.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Yeah, so what you did in a half hour is pretty impressive. And I guess the answer is that in the class, when you take Maya, there's a lot more discussion, a lot more chance for you to ask questions and to get your answers. So you'll be wading through a lot of different things that you know a little bit about, and then you'll find a lot more about it from our instructors who, even though they're crazy like Jake, no, even though, they have amazing knowledge and they can pull this all together for you. So I think we've answered a lot of questions. I wanted to give you guys a chance now to, if anybody has any other questions. And I just want to tell you what our timing is. And for the rest of the, until we get to October. Most our Maya Classic classes will start after the high holidays, after the holiday season. So after Simchat Torah, which means the second week in October. And the first semester would run through, the end of December, beginning of January. We will hopefully within the next, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, have figured out timing for what classes we can offer based on how many people are really interested. So I'll just reiterate again that it would be very helpful for those of you who have not yet sent it to me, your preference. Are you a daytime person? Are you an evening person? Are you an in-person person? Are you an online student? And then we'll take all that information and we'll be able to let people know Tuesday night, Thursday morning, I'm just pulling these out of the air, we'll be offering these classes. And we'll send you a tentative calendar, and there'll be a registration link sent out that you can go, to our website, and you can go and then fill out the information, which we hope you'll do. So we hope we've given you a little bit of a taste, and that you'll want more. And if there's ever any question, whether you're in the class or not, you can always write to us at maya@hebrewcollege.edu. We have a full team of people who will answer your questions, usually very quickly. I'll just stop talking, and anybody have any questions? Okay, Sharon, unmute.
How often does class meet?
So class meets once a week for each session. Each semester is 11 sessions. And it'll meet once a week for 2 hours.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thomas?
Thomas?
If you run an in-person class and one attends it and you miss one of those classes, are those classes recorded, or you end up watching an online?
No,
class?
they are recorded. So we have to figure that out. In the past, before COVID, when we had in person, the only recording was an audio recording. Depending on where the class is held and the technical capabilities of that room, we will either record just the audio or we'll record a full video as well. So this year's class, the in-person class, was held at Temple Emmanuel in Newton. They had the capability to record the video and the audio. So that was sent out. But either way, you will get a recording either way of the class. So it just depends on what our capabilities are.
And if you have an in-person class, or maybe you'll have more, but is it likely that at least one will be in the Newton Brookline area?
Yeah, we'd love to host one at Hebrew College. You should all know that Hebrew College moved in January to a new campus near Temple, or connected to Temple Rayam. It's a smaller building, and the rabbinical school takes up a lot of the classrooms. So I haven't negotiated yet for space, but that is our goal. If not, there are synagogues like Temple Emmanuel and others in the Newton area that have hosted in the past. And as I said at the very beginning, maybe some of you didn't hear it, if you live in Beverly, if you live in wherever you live in Westwood, there's a synagogue there. And in the past, many of those synagogues have hosted a Maya class. So if you want to go back and help me negotiate, because then you don't have to schlep as far, right? And we will gladly work with synagogues to host. Okay. I see Meredith, you have your hand up.
Yes, I was just wondering if the classes are always weekdays or if they're Sunday, like a Sunday evening class.
We haven't had in a while a Sunday evening. If people, if there's enough, here's how it works. If there's enough people who say, and enough is at least 12 to 15, usually 15 is our minimum, who want to meet on a Sunday night, we will find an instructor to meet with that class. But in the past, I can tell you the most recent history, the last few years, it's been we've only had one of each class, and we've had one daytime on a weekday and one evening weekday. So I can't guarantee anything at this point, but we are willing to work with you. Matt.
Hi, yeah. So my question is, does the curriculum ever adjust in an individual class for what the knowledge of the particular makeup might be?
I'm going to let Jacob handle that one.
Well, it's a good question. I guess, to be fair, we mostly assume that our students don't have a lot of background in the history and the text. If you have more, I suppose it's conceivable we could have a class like that. I don't think we've had that, actually. Now
I think the way we've handled it is that, depending, there's a baseline knowledge, which is everybody sort of starting out together. And then, as I mentioned, in terms of the readings and such, people have asked their instructor, I want to learn more about the Romans, okay, and how they handled Masada. Can you recommend a book? So people could go delve in deeper. But yeah, I mean, technically, Maya is the 2-year class is a sort of an introductory overview, which will then lead you to want to study more. And everybody here might not know, but we have a whole series of courses at Hebrew College called Maya Select, which are individual courses that do delve deeper into all kinds of subjects. And you can find out more about that on our website as well. Roberta.
I take and teach courses in another learning community in the Harvard program. So, we do things in advance in terms of picking times and, days and everything. So when will you decide when the classes will be?
So as I mentioned, I think in the next, we're working on it now. As soon as I get more information from the people who attended tonight and the people who couldn't attend, who sent me their availability, then we will try to, match as much as possible the times and the dates that the days that we're gonna offer the courses. We try to match it up with our students. I will say one of the nice things about Maya is it's a very personalized program. We really work with you to make sure you can get online, that understand that you have the recordings, that any issues that you have. So we really try to meet our students' needs, which is why, I just didn't pick and say, okay, Rabbi so-and-so who teaches Bible, is available on Tuesday evenings from, 8 to 10 or whatever, this is when we're going to offer the class. We don't want to do that because we really want to make this as accessible as possible to as many people. So I would say within the next, it's only May and the class doesn't start until October. So I would say by June, so give us a few weeks. We're working on putting things together. And then by then, when there's additional, so you guys are getting in on the ground level, because anybody that is interested in taking, there's a lot of people that sign up during the summer, whatever, and they will see that there's a schedule, and they'll say, oh, I can fit into that schedule or not. Right now, we're trying to make the schedule fit you. So, and us fit you guys. Anybody else with a question? All right, well, we've just run out of time. I will be sending you a follow-up email. It will have this recording and a link to what's on our website in case you haven't read it yet, but I think you've gotten most of the information. I hope you've gotten a great taste, and Jacob has done a great job with giving us thousands of questions that we need answers to in the next 2 years. So thank you for coming tonight, and Lila Tov, good evening.
Good evening.